How people lived in the coldest winter of the Middle Ages. In an ancient winter, rivers froze so solid that people thought they would never return to life. Birds vanished from the sky, firewood ran out in the villages, and the nights were longer than human endurance could bear. Yet, despite this, people woke up every single morning, lit a small fire, and tried to survive just one more day. This is not a story of war, but the story of the coldest winter known to the Middle Ages and how humans lived through it. When winter began to swallow the world, it always arrived quietly. No one in the ancient European villages feared the first cold night, nor the wind passing through the forest trees, nor even the fog covering the dirt roads at dawn. People in the Middle Ages were used to the cold. They were born into a world without electric heaters, without window glass that could trap warmth efficiently, and without the thick clothing we know today. But in some years, winter was different. A winter unlike anything they had ever known before. What terrified them most was that they never knew when it would end. In those ancient times, people did not understand the weather as we do today. There was no one to explain the causes of storms or dropping temperatures. When rain froze over the trees or the river stopped moving, they sometimes believed that the world itself was angry. There were years recorded in old tales and books with terrifying descriptions. Years when crops froze completely, animals died inside barns from the intense cold, and getting a piece of warm bread became a true achievement. In some northern regions, the sun would appear for only a few hours before darkness quickly swallowed it. Night was so long that it made time feel frozen. Imagine a small village in the Middle Ages, a few clustered wooden houses, their roofs covered in thatch, with smoke slowly rising from small openings at the top. Outside, snow covers everything. The trees, the roads, the wells, and even the doors would sometimes freeze shut, making them difficult to open. Inside the houses, the situation wasn't much better. Fire was the only thing separating people from death, and for this reason, wood was sometimes more precious than gold. At the beginning of winter, men would start gathering firewood in massive quantities. They spent entire days in the cold forests, cutting trees and loading logs onto simple carts, pulled by horses. Everyone knew something very important. If the firewood ran out in the middle of winter, the family might not survive until spring. Because of this, the fire almost never went out. It remained lit all night, even during sleep. Family members would huddle around it in silence, listening to the crackling of the wood while the wind battered the walls outside. On the harshest nights, ice would form inside the houses themselves. Yes, inside the houses. The weak wooden walls were completely unable to block the cold, and people would sometimes wake up to find the water frozen right next to them. As for clothing, it was heavy and coarse. Wool was the most important thing a person owned in winter. Some families slept wearing most of their clothes because taking them off meant facing the freezing air directly. In fact, some people slept with animals inside the barns, not because they liked it, but because the body heat of the animals helped them stay alive. Cows and sheep were a real source of warmth, and although the smell was unpleasant, dying of cold was far worse. In remote villages, winter isolated people completely from the world. Roads disappeared under the snow, carts stopped, and traveling became a risk from which no one might return. Therefore, each village had to rely entirely on itself. Dried bread, stored grains, salted meat, and dried fish. Everything was prepared long before winter. Women spent weeks carefully storing food because any small mistake could mean starvation later. But the problem was that the long winter showed no mercy. As time stretched on, food began to vanish slowly. In some years, hunger started weeks before the end of winter. Here began the hardest part. People tried to make the food last as long as possible. A small piece of bread was divided among several people. A thin soup was made of water and a few herbs, and sometimes almost nothing at all. Children suffered the most. Their tiny bodies could not easily withstand the cold, and many of them did not survive those harsh seasons. At night, when everything went quiet, people could only hear the sound of the wind, a long, sad sound passing through the trees, making the darkness feel even deeper. In that ancient world, where there were no streetlights, no crowded cities, and no car sounds, winter felt like a massive living creature surrounding humans from every direction.